This is a sword that I wrapped in Vivid's holographic red weave chrome vinyl. I'll show you how I did this in this video, so let's get started. So you start off by ensuring that your sword is fully clean and that you have a piece cut out sizable to wrap the entire blade all the way down the length and over the top, and making sure that it reaches the bottom of what would be the sharp edge of the blade. You can see this film by Vivid has a plastic protective cap on it that I went ahead and peeled off. It's just easier to install without that on. I just sized up my piece to make sure I knew exactly where I wanted to place it, and then I peeled off the backing paper. As you can see, I do have a little bit less towards the bottom, especially towards the base of the sword. And you can see I'm just tacking it on lightly with my finger just to make sure that I have it placed about where I need it to be, using my thumb to run along the blade and make sure everything is tacked. Looks like over the top I'll have enough going over to wrap the other side. At the base, you can see I had where the base of the sword starts to go into the hilt. There was a little bubble where there is an edge there, and you can see I made a relief cut so that I could then get the vinyl tucked down into the base of that edge there. Towards the tip, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another relief cut kind of going out and away, and this will allow a tab towards the top of the screen later on so that could fall off, and then I'm cutting off towards the front just so I have a little bit less excess vinyl to fight with. Now that I've done that, made some relief cuts, I'm going to go ahead and start to try to lay this down using a little bit of heat to help me out. And there are some engravings in the blade body itself, as you can see towards the bottom there. I'm trying to heat it up and work the air out of that kind of arrow point shaped kind of indentation in there, and there's an air bubble in there, so I just want to make sure I get everything worked out. I'm using my micro squeegee to help. I lift up the vinyl towards an edge to let some of the air out, so I'm not necessarily having to poke any air bubbles with a poker or the tip of my knife on that. Once I've got that one down pretty good, I go ahead and use my micro squeegee to help lay everything down towards that base and into the bottom of the sword. Now that I have that base part down, I'm going to work my way up towards the middle and top of the blade, adding a little bit of heat to soften the vinyl. This vinyl with heat does like to curl up, so you can see that towards the bottom of the blade there. With the vinyl softened, I'm just using my finger to push into the little dragon engraving on the side of this blade. As the vinyl cools down, it gets a little harder for it to not go into, or it gets harder for it to emboss into or fall into those recesses. So I just warm it up, press in, warm it up, press in. Watch your heat. Use only low heat. This is a chrome vinyl, so high heat will damage this vinyl really easily. And so all I'm doing is using low heat to gently warm up the vinyl. And then as I move up towards the point of the blade, I'm just pushing everything down, making sure everything's sealed in, adding heat as I could feel the vinyl not being soft anymore and wanting to go into those indentations quite as well. Like I said, I am holding up the vinyl a little bit so air has a way to escape out as I do that. As you can see, I just popped it up, added some heat, and then I'm going to go ahead and push down into that dragon engraving in the side of the blade. And I'm just basically going to repeat this process as I work my way up towards the tip of the blade. Lift up, add a little bit of heat to warm up the vinyl, push down what I can into the indentations. You're just using my fingers, as you can see. If you have a roller, that would be great. If you kind of have like a sponge tool, that might be useful as well. So I've made it basically past the dragon now. I'm just going to warm up the rest of the vinyl towards the tip and smooth everything down along the face of the blade. And I'm going to make sure that everything is down, going back down towards the bottom, and making sure that the vinyl is adhered to the side of the blade really well. Once I'm comfortable that it has, I'm just going to trim off the excess at the bottom of what would be the sharp edge of the blade. And I'm just trimming away carefully with the side of my knife blade against the edge of the bottom of the sword blade, as you can see. And I'm just using it as my cut guide, carefully just cutting away the excess vinyl until I get to the base, trim off that piece there. And then towards the hilt, at that bottom part there, I'm just going to trim off that little tab that I made here in just a second. But first, I'm going to use a micro squeegee to make sure everything's tucked in really nice and tightly so that there's full coverage. And then I did find there what looked like a little bubble in that indentation, so I just went ahead and poked a tiny little hole and then pushed out any air that I thought might be in there. Now that I have all that done and ready to go, I'm going to go ahead and trim out that little tab piece of vinyl right there, as you see me doing. All right, so essentially this side of the blade is basically wrapped, and I'm just running my finger over it a couple times, adding some heat to make sure I got it all settled in. Now I'm lifting the sword up off of the table, and you can see I'm just heating along the entire length of the top of the blade, and what that's causing the vinyl to do is kind of fall down, and you can see I'm starting to roll and make sure I smooth down the edge of the vinyl over the edge as it goes over the top of the blade. Again, heat will make this vinyl curl. As you see now, it curled up and I'm kind of fighting it and pulling it apart. But as I unroll it, you can see that I'm applying the vinyl towards the very top flat of the top of the blade. And I'm making sure that I have it all the way down and sealed, that there's no air bubble channels in that area. I'm adding a little bit of heat to help out and make sure that's good. And then now that I've got that and I feel comfortable after I've worked all the vinyl down, I'm starting to work the vinyl down the other side of the face of the blade, as you can see me doing there. And I'm kind of starting in the middle or the bottom of where the sword blade bows, and then I'm working my way towards the top. And you can kind of see it creates kind of an arch type shape in the as the vinyl as you try to apply it. So right now I elected to go ahead and work my way towards the front or the tip of the blade and apply the vinyl down the face of it, down the sides, and I'm just using my fingers again to smooth it down. There are some small indentations, engravings on this side of the blade that you can see that I'm just pushing the vinyl down into that so that it kind of embosses, if you will. And then once I've made it past that part and towards the tip of the blade, I'm comfortable that it's fully down smooth. I start to work my way towards the back. Notice that I need to make another relief cut here, and so you can see I'm going to go ahead and do that so that towards the top right where the vinyl is, it creates a free tab that can fall down, and I can apply it over the side of this side of the blade of the sword's face, blade face, and work my way down, as you can see me doing there. Just kind of, I am giving a little bit of a tug as I go down the face, just to kind of help keep everything straight as I smooth it down with my finger. Doing the same process here. There's that kind of pointy indentation, so I had the vinyl lifted up, and I'm just using my finger to push it in, the vinyl into that indentation, adding just a little bit of heat to help soften the vinyl and make sure that it all gets down and into that indentation, working my way down towards the base or the hilt of the blade. As you can see, I'm working my way down, made it just past that, so I'm smoothing the vinyl down towards the bottom edge of the blade, which is now at the top of the screen. Make my way towards that hilt, find that I'm going to need to make a little bit more of a relief cut here, just a little bit longer towards the base of that where the hard edge is, as you can see in the video. And then so now that I have that relief cut made, I can now tuck that piece of vinyl in there a little bit better towards the bottom of the hilt against the kind of sharp edge where the blade goes into the handle and hilt of the sword. Working my way back up, you can see I'm trying to see if I made it all the way down to the what would be the sharp edge of the blade. The vinyl did curl up because of the heat, so I just try to uncurl it. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut off this excess vinyl at the base of the sword here and take that tab out of there, and I can kind of see what I'm doing a little bit better. On the top side there's a little bit of the silver that's exposed, and so I'm going to trim all around. I'm going to trim around that so that using those little gaps in there just to fit everything in perfectly and nicely into that, so it's fully covered on the top back side of the blade. And then now I'm getting ready to trim off the excess on the what would be the sharp edge of the blade. And so you can see, as earlier I did check to make sure that I was fully covered, and so now I'm starting to trim off the excess vinyl towards what would be the cutting or sharp edge of the blade. This sword is not sharp, it's purely decorative. It's just a basic sword for show that you put up on a stand for a display. Anyway, so now that I've trimmed off that excess, I'm just making sure I have everything nice and flat, and then I could feel some little micro edges on both sides. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my knife, my utility knife, and I'm going to just carefully shave along the edge there to get off any what would be pick edges. You can see in the video there's kind of like a really, really thin, almost string of vinyl. You can see it on my knife there. That's just how much was hanging off the edge. Super thin, basically as thick as a hair, really. And so I'm going to do that on the other side just to make sure that there's no pick edges, and it feels nice. And as you touch the edge of the blade, you don't feel vinyl hanging off of it. Even though you might not see it, you can feel it because it's such a super thin shaving of vinyl that's along there. And so now after I've done that, I'm just going to kind of feel everything down, and then I'm going to go ahead and grab my wrap glove, and I'm just going to use that because it's nice and smooth and slides on vinyl really nice, and use that to help me lay everything down. I'm going to add a little bit of heat to this side of the blade to make sure everything is down, I don't have any excess bubbles, soften the vinyl and help the adhesive flow a little better, then use my wrap glove and smooth down the vinyl onto the face of that blade. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side of the sword as well. Add some heat, make sure everything's sealed down, and then use my wrap glove to go ahead and try to make sure everything is smoothed down nice and evenly. And so once I finish that, for all intents and purposes, this sword has been fully wrapped.